Thanks to you for joining us on Indivisible. I'm your host, John Stubbins. We're thrilled to have you with us, America. This is the show where we put God, faith, family, and country first, and we will always tell you the truth. Make sure that you follow our streaming partners, PatriotTV.live, Clout Hub, Pill.net, Foxhole app, YouTube, Facebook, Pure Social TV, Spreely.com, FrankSpeech.com. Subscribe to all of our partner platforms, and you can also donate at indivisibleevents.us. And you can also follow defendingtherepublic.org, fair and transparent elections there, and all of our investigations, events, etc. I want to start today because we are at a real crossroads here, America. And, you know, right now we're living in two different Americas. That's basically what this boils down to. If you look across America, you've got, I don't know, probably 40% of the people that, you know, that hate the other 45 or 50% of the people because they won't vaccinate or they won't do this or they don't pay attention to CRT or they don't want Black Lives Matter. It's just on and on and on. Every single day, you guys know about it. We bring it to you all the time. So, you know, whether it's our border being a sieve, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's CRT, whether it's China, it's one problem after another. And we're never going to get this resolved. We're never going to be able to move on as a country and be indivisible and be strong as a country until we can get through some of this nonsense. I want to bring on my guest today, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. How you doing, Dr. Gorka?
Good. Thanks for having me, John.
We're thrilled to have you, sir. And, you know, I wanted to see if you could touch on this right out of the gate, because it seems like we're a divided country right now. And it seems like it grows a little more divided every single day. It's very frustrating. It's sad more than anything. Growing up as an American patriot and myself being a veteran, it makes me sick.
Well, it shouldn't make you sick. It should be something that mobilizes you and helps you to understand what it is we face today in terms of a domestic threat. It's not conservatives that divided this nation.
Right.
It's not the quote unquote Republican Party or the MAGA movement. It's the left, and it was a very, very conscious choice. I travel the nation. I often get asked, how did we get here? Well, guess what? Look in the mirror. We got here because people who call themselves patriots and conservatives were asleep at the wheel. They lurched for the snooze button for the last 90 years. The unbelievable threat we face domestically from a radicalized Democrat Party is not a function of anything to do with Obama or Biden. It is the bitter fruit of a 90-year progression. I've detailed this in my last book, The War for America's Soul. It starts with a crippled Italian communist in a prison cell who says, The War for America's Soul, who said, communism's never going to function in an advanced nation where there is a strong Judeo-Christian heritage and where there's a strong middle class. The only places that communism actually succeeded were in backward nations with largely rural populations that were uneducated, whether it was Tsarist Russia in 1917 or whether it was China in 1948 under Mao. If you have a robust middle class that is strong in its Christian values, the idea of communism never takes hold. The idea of a revolution spontaneously erupting is impossible. So what did Antonio Gramsci write? And this is where everything changed. You know, forget Lenin, forget Stalin, forget Mao. The threat to Western Christian democracies comes from what this communist cripple wrote in that prison cell. He said, if you want to take over advanced countries, Christian countries, you don't assault the institutions frontally. You take them over from the inside. This was later termed the long march through the institutions. So you take over culture, you take over Hollywood, you take over the schools, you take over media, until people wake up one morning and the frog is cooked in the hot water that it didn't realize was gradually increasing in temperature over decades. So the fact is, we let the left divide us. And here in America, somebody called Derek Hall, who was a mentor to a certain student at Harvard called Barack Obama, he came up with critical race theory. And this is what we are witnessing now across the nation at school board meetings, inside our K through 12, where they realized America is a classless society. Look, I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born in this country. I only became a citizen 9 years ago, but I ended up in the White House as deputy assistant to the president. There is no class structure in America. There's no stratification like there was in the UK where I was born. As such, the class division that Karl Marx tried to leverage as the source of tension to create a communist revolution, you can't do that here. So what did Derek Hall, what did the founders of Black Lives Matter and Antifa realize? You've got to divide Americans. How do you divide them? If it can't be done through class, if we have the most meritocratic system in the world, you divide them through other identities. You divide them by sex, the men versus the women. This is where you get feminism. You divide them based upon race. This is where you get Black Lives Matter. This is where you get the idea that if you're white, you're inherently racist, but if you're black, you're a permanent victim. Or you divide them based upon this surreal concept of sexual identity, that you can have 148 different genders, and we're going to divide you based upon these fictional things that, you know, not even a university professor can keep track of. So the reason we are divided today is because the left decided the only way to get in power and stay in power is to divide us. So it's up to us to stand up to it.
Yeah, you know, and Dr. Gorka, it really sounds, and I know that you've been a huge expert in the field of Islamic jihad, and when I study Islamic jihad, stealth jihad comes to mind when you talk about that approach from about destroying from within. That's the approach of stealth jihad, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, it's a similar approach, and there's a reason that, you know, the radical left wing are always on the side of our enemies. When President Trump decides to go to war with ISIS, when we came into the White House and we said, okay, we're not going to say this is a threat you just have to live with like Obama did. We're going to destroy the ISIS caliphate. But the connections are multiple and multifarious. Yes, it is a stealth approach in both cases. But at the end of the day, look, I tweeted this out at the weekend. It kind of just came to me. There's this fascinating confluence. Why is it that everybody who hates President Trump also hates America?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Doctor.
It tells you everything you need to know. And we don't have to get overly, complicated or sophisticated. Today's division in America, it doesn't matter whether you've got blue hair, pink hair, whether you're a man who thinks he's a woman or a squirrel. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it boils down to one question. Do you love America? If you love America, you want us to succeed, to prosper, to be safe. If you hate America, you'll open the borders, you'll be on the side of the Taliban, you'll be on the side of Iran, you'll be on the side of China. So the dividing line in America today is a very simple one. Do you love America like my old boss, Donald Trump, does? Or do you hate it? And do you think America's the problem? It really is that simple, John.
Yeah, and I had Gordon Chang on the other day. And Gordon comes on all the time, and we discuss China and what's going on with China. But what's interesting, I've also taken the deep dives, and we've done specials on, Thousand Currents and BLM and Antifa and the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, Chesa Boudin over in San Francisco, like Mallory Millett, her own nephew is the DA in Philadelphia. These DAs, whether it's Philadelphia or Seattle or San Francisco or Los Angeles, they have these defund the police mantras. They have these no cash bail mantras that have taken hold in these cities, and it's emboldened these criminals. It's emboldened BLM and Antifa as we moved along the way, and it just seems like they get more and more brazen with their attacks. You just wonder what's going to be the next thing that sets these people off to go, burning something else down. And again, if you're absolutely right. If you love this country, you want that border closed. If you love this country, you're not for Islamic jihad. All these things matter. And a lot of Americans out there, they haven't been paying attention. And some of them are starting to pay attention. You see it in these school board meetings with CRT, for instance. A lot more parents are showing up at these meetings and they're making their voice heard. Thank God.
Yeah, if people are listening to you and are starting to wake up, I have a couple of recommendations. A book that will change your life in terms of understanding the domestic threat to America from radicals like BLM or, the extremist Democrat Party today is the late, great Andrew Breitbart's Righteous Indignation. He admits it that he was a mindless left-wing, drunk in college. And then he witnessed the Clarence Thomas hearings, which, let's just remind everybody, were run by Senator Joe Biden, the quote-unquote high-tech lynching of a black man who dared to be a conservative was executed by Joe Biden.
Yes,
and
sir.
As Andrew was watching these televised hearings, he thought, what's going on here? Pubic hairs on Coke cans. Are they serious? Why are they trying to destroy a black man simply because he dares to be on the Supreme Court and he happens to be a conservative? So that was, Andrew's moment where the scales fell from his eyes. And then he started to do the homework. In chapter 6 of Righteous Indignation is this masterful tour d'horizon of where the new left comes from. Why you need to understand, why does Barack Obama launch his political career in the living room of Bill Ayers, a terrorist, a weather underground domestic terrorist,
exactly,
who's a tenured professor in Chicago. This isn't happenstance. The guy that actually ghost wrote Obama's first autobiography is a convicted terrorist like Bill Ayers.
Exactly. And I'll throw this out there too, Dr. Gorka. Bernadine Doran, Susan Rosenberg, Thousand Currents, they're all connected. And they're all connected. Bodine is what? The stepson of Bill Ayers, for God's sakes.
And these aren't coincidences. And then you add to that, you mentioned the prosecutors, these prosecutors who have it as a mission to release criminals and to be on the side of criminals. You got to say the boogeyman's name. Let's give Media Matters something to write about. You've got to give credit to the left. George Soros understood that we are a federation. We are a nation of states. Therefore, federal politics, not really that important. Local. What really matters is, are you funding the radical school board candidates? Are you funding the radical local district attorney who will be on the side of criminals, who will give criminals the right to vote? And it's been very, very successful. These people who are chosen because of their radicalism had millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars pumped into local campaigns. And as a result, conservatives wake up one morning and the radicals are running everything from the local police department to the local school board. So you got to give them credit. They had a plan and they executed it.
They really do. And they know how to do it. And they know how to stick together. We know that. I want to talk about a couple of things just to get your opinion. And you saw that Perkins Coie, you saw the indictment handed on the Durham grand juries. Where do you think that's going, Dr. Gorka? Do you foresee additional indictments of maybe the Hillary Clinton and other members of her campaign?
Well, look, I'm incredibly cynical that there will be any consequences for the largest hoax ever perpetrated on the U.S. people, the Russia collusion hoax. But I just reread the indictment. I had a flight to take, and I reread it on the plane. And look, there's something very interesting about the Sussman indictment. Firstly, I had my staff count it because I wasn't sure. Hillary Clinton is mentioned 45 times. So the Hillary Clinton campaign is mentioned 45 times in a 27-page indictment. That's ballsy. That's not pulling any punches. Secondly, in the evidentiary paper trail, where they prove that this lawyer working for Perkins Coie, who was billing the Clinton campaign for his generation of the false smear campaign against President Trump and Alpha Bank and Russia collusion, who was having meetings with, this is amazing, he walks into the FBI, a lawyer off the street, and says, I want to have a meeting with the chief counsel of the FBI. And they give him the meeting with the chief counsel, and he says, I'm just a concerned citizen, and I've got this evidence of Donald Trump in a Russian bank, which of course was fake and was generated. And then Durham quotes at length internal emails between Sussman, the Clinton campaign, and I'd love to know who this is. It'll come out eventually. Tech CEO #1, who was also funding Sussman's smear campaign. And the fact that they've got these internal communications means that in all other things being equal, this guy could be, locked away for a very, very long time for misrepresenting himself to the FBI and selling false information. However, big caveat, it's a lawyer nobody's ever heard of. It's not Comey. It's not the people at the top who initiated an investigation. It's not the John Brennan, the director of the CIA. So at the moment, it's flunkies. And on top of that, remember, this is an indictment in D.C. 94% of D.C. voted for Hillary Clinton. So the idea that you're going to get a jury that's going to say, "Oh yes, this is naughty, and Hillary's in trouble," no, this city is the swamp. So I'm not making any predictions, but the indictment is very interesting.
Yes, it is, sir. And by the way, again, I want to just show this book, Dr. Gorka's The War for America's Soul. And just what an amazing book, Doctor. I can't wait to finally run into you in person, so maybe I can get mine signed.
We can do that.
I'd love to get that signed from you. But please, I'm scrolling this at the bottom. If you don't have a copy of Dr. Gorka's book, please go to the bottom, follow the bottom of the screen. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, you can reach him through Twitter. You can reach him through Instagram, all scrolling at the bottom of the screen. And you can also go to his website, sebgorka.com. Again, that's sebgorka.com. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Gorka. And on the other side of the break, I want to discuss the fatherless issue in America and why it's so important. We'll be right back. Big news, America. Mike is bringing back the pillow offer for just $29.98. They're the softest pillows. They don't go flat. Wash them and dry them as many times as you like, and they still keep their shape. And they're made in America. Mike is offering his premium My Pillows at his lowest price ever. Queen size for $29.98, regularly $69.98. That's a $40 savings. And king size, only $5 more. Go to mypillow.com and enter the promo code INDIVISIBLE for my show, or call 1-800-716-4639 and give them the code INDIVISIBLE for my show, and you're going to get huge savings. Dr. Gorka, I want to bring on a friend of both of ours, Melissa Isaak. She's a lawyer with the Isaak Law Firm down in Alabama. She's also a JAG lawyer, and she was a child and adolescent therapist before she went to Liberty University and went to law school. But on top of that, you are her political crush. So I want to bring on Melissa Isaak onto the show. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm doing well. Hi, John.
Good to see you. We were just talking. I hope you were following the conversation, because I want to dive into something else here real quick. We've got this fatherless issue. And as you know, I work with you and Eric at times with Dad Talk Today, trying to bring out, this court system on giving fathers their rights. But the other side of this coin, when we talk about CRT and BLM and Antifa and the youth in our streets, is we've got a fatherless crisis. And I mean an epidemic. Look, the border itself, we'll get into the border in a minute. That's a sieve. But I'm talking about in America, in our family structure, the American family has been broken down. We've got an 80%, almost 80 percentile fatherless rate in the Black community. It's almost 50% in the white community. Same thing in the Hispanic community. You know, these numbers were all under 3% if you look back in the 70s. That's a problem.
Well, it is. And I think this is sort of what Dr. Gorka was talking about, is we're being taken over from the inside out. And this started a long time ago. I mean, obviously, I benefited from the first wave of feminism, but the subsequent waves, they're toxic. But we've sat back and we watched this happen. And, you know, where were the churches when all this was happening? Where are the lawyers? Where are the constitutionalists? So probably the biggest question is, where are the churches? Because we have seen the consequences of the breakdown of the family. We've seen the consequences of taking fathers out of the lives of children. But you understand this had to happen for really this socialist, this communist agenda to move in and be successful, as they had to break apart the family.
Sure. And race is being used to destroy everything, even in the church. My friend Trevor Loudon, he did the special on the enemies within the church. Dr. Gorka, I'm sure that you've got an opinion on this. What do you think about this fatherless issue?
Well, it's not an accident that in communist regimes, the greatest threat to the regime was a strong family, and why children were actually encouraged to dime out their parents if they told the wrong joke or if they said something negative about the given dictator. You were encouraged to actually betray your own family members. It's also not a coincidence that, you know, what one of the war cries of the Weather Underground, the people like Bernardine Dawn, like Bill Ayers, if you read the Prairie Fire Manifesto, which is their Maoist call to arms in America, one of their catchphrases was "smash monogamy." Why do you want to smash monogamy? Why do you want to make, you know, sexual relations completely devoid of any meaning? Because then you can undermine the building blocks of Western civilization, which is the nuclear family. So yeah, and it's a tragedy. I mean, the fact that, you know, most Black Americans still vote Democrat. Candace Owens is absolutely right. This is the new political plantation. The Democrats got off their horses and whipping you in the cotton fields, and now they're keeping you in a political plantation where a Black woman is encouraged not to marry, to get more money from the state if she doesn't marry. You know, the system creates a dependency that locks people in generation after generation, and it's all the more stunning. I think, you know, there is a slow waking up when you see the fact that my former boss, President Trump, in 2020 received more Black and Hispanic votes than any incumbent Republican since the 1960s. That's despite 4 years of being called a racist, a white supremacist, and a Nazi. So, you know, we have a lot of work to do, but it is clear that some people are waking up. And I just asked my Black brothers here in America and Black sisters, the Democrats were the racists. The Jim Crow laws were Democrat laws. The KKK was the terrorist arm of the Democrat Party. And the first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator. So guys, it's time to wake up.
Yeah, and I went on, you know, what's interesting, I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Gorka. A couple months ago, I went on Newsmax. I think this was in May. And Newsmax had me on to do a segment about Joe Biden and Jim Crow. And I tell you, I got so frustrated because I've been talking about, Melissa knows this, I've been talking about Jim Crow and CRT and white guilt and the 1619 Project for over a year. And I've been trying to get the message out to people that, look, the Democratic Party, for whatever reason, and I still don't get this, and I'd love to come on your show to discuss this further, Dr. Gorka, but I got to tell you, for the last 60 years, maybe more than 60 years, but at least 60 years, the Democratic Party has gotten away with this lie somehow that it was us, the Republicans, the conservatives, that were the party of slavery and the KKK and Jim Crow. They always invoke, whether it's Barack Obama or Joe Biden, they always invoke Jim Crow. And this, whenever I hear that, it boils my blood because I don't understand how someone can stand in front of the country, in front of a microphone and a podium, and talk about Jim Crow when it was your party, Democrats, that were the party of the KKK, Jim Crow, slavery, the party that resisted civil rights legislation, by the way. Look, this has to stop. And as far as I'm concerned, and I talked to a lot of people about this over the last 6 months to a year, it is high time that the Republicans and the conservatives get together and band as one and start attacking this nonsense, this narrative that the left has come out with and somehow gotten away with. I can't believe that no one has called them out and done it in a national way, the way that they've done it. But they lie over and over again. And you know what they say? If you lie enough, then people start to believe it. Okay. But it's a lie. I don't care how you slice it. It is a lie. It's their party.
Yeah, I have to go and prep for my radio show, but I'll just say this. Look, you just have to open your eyes. You know, we have in the White House probably one of the most racist presidents we've ever had. This is a man who said on the floor of the Senate, I don't want my children, quote unquote, growing up in a racial jungle. This is the man who, as a candidate for president, said, if you're not voting for me, you ain't black. And of course, as we mentioned previously, this is the man who chaired the Senate committee to try and prevent on trumped up spurious charges, a black judge of impeccable record from becoming a Supreme Court Associate Justice.
Exactly.
Why? Because Clarence Thomas dared to be a conservative. That's who Joe Biden is. So yeah, it's about time people woke up, and it's about time, you know, our black American brothers and sisters emancipated themselves from the racist Democrat Party that has kept them on a political plantation now, you know, since the 1970s.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I could put a message in a bottle today, and you could crack that bottle every single year, and I guarantee you it's going to read the same message over and over again. I don't care if it's Burgess Owens. I don't care if it's Candace Owens. I don't care if it's Larry Elder. I don't care if it's Herschel Walker. It doesn't matter. Any black candidate that runs as a conservative or as a Republican, they are going to label a white supremacist, a racist, which is nonsense. Anybody with a brain, with common sense, has to realize that is total nonsense, and yet they get away with it. And I've just had it with this narrative. What do you think, Melissa?
Well, I think it comes down to fear. People are afraid of being called racist. They're afraid of being labeled anti-vaxxers. They're afraid of losing their paychecks. They're afraid of standing up against feminism. And so, which has become this feminazi party. But people are afraid. They're afraid of being labeled. They're afraid of being ridiculed. We have to, and here's the thing, we're going to lose our country if we don't stand up collectively.
That's right.
It comes down to fear. We have to put the fear away.
That's right. And I just want to say one more time to the audience, again, make sure that you get Dr. Gorka's book, The War for America's Soul. This is a preeminent book that you've got to have. I was just going to say, Mark Levin's book, American Marxism. My friend David Padrush, who asked me to put this show together, is obviously Mark's executive producer, and that's another fantastic book. And then Who is Karl Marx was another book. These three books, Dr. Gorka's, Mark Levin's, and Who is Karl Marx by Jim Simpson. These are three books that you should read right away. But I, again, highly recommend that you get Dr. Gorka's The War for America's Soul. I think that you will be glad that you did, because you'll learn a lot in the book, and it says a lot. Dr. Gorka, I really appreciate you coming on. I hope that you'll come back to the show. Can you hear me, Dr. Gorka? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir?
Thank you kindly, and thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you, sir. We lost Dr. Gorka there at the end, but Melissa, I really appreciate you coming on. Sorry, that time went so fast.
It's okay. It goes fast.
It really does. And I really appreciate you coming on. God bless you, Melissa.
You too.
Have a wonderful day, my friend. That was Melissa Isaak and Dr. Gorka. I was thrilled to have both of them on. today. We had a lot to discuss, and boy, a half hour goes fast. So my next guest is Brian Kennedy, and we will be right back with Brian right after this break. By now, you've all heard me talk about Mike and his great products. Well, guess what? Mike's now introduced his MyPillow My Slippers, which are fantastic. Great on my feet, soft as can be. I love them. Mike's taken over 2 years to develop these slippers. He's designed them to wear indoor or outdoor all day, all night long. Made with MyPillow foam and impact gel to help prevent fatigue. Made with quality leather suede. For a limited time, Mike is offering 40% off his new My Slippers. The My Slippers are so comfortable, you're going to want to get them for the whole family. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square and use promo code INDIVISIBLE. You'll also get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, and MyPillow towel sets. Or call 1-800-716-4639 and enter INDIVISIBLE as your promo code. We're back, and I want to bring on my next guest who had a really fascinating piece in American Mind, and it was entitled "Biden Embraces Defeat," and that's a great place to pick right up. How you doing, Brian?
Great to be with you, John. You're doing some great things there for show.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on. We're having a little bit of mic trouble there. Let me see if I can adjust something. Hopefully that fixes it there. By the way, Brian is he's the president of American Strategy Group, and that's a think tank. For those of you who don't know Brian, it's dedicated to understanding the strategic threats to the United States. And Mr. Kennedy is also a board member and senior fellow at the Claremont Institute, and he served as president from 2002 to 2015. During his 25-year tenure there at the Claremont Institute, he directed the Golden State Center in Sacramento, their national security project, and served as publisher of the Claremont Review of Books. And Brian, you are also the chairman of the Present Danger China, which was founded in March of 2019. And you're also a member of Independent Working Group on Missile Defense. And Brian is also the author, like I said, of the author of Communist China's War Inside America by Encounter Books. And I want to show that book right now. There it is. Communist China's War Inside America by Brian Kennedy. How's things going with this book, Brian?
It's going well, helped in no small part by the fact that Americans have been living through COVID-19 for the last 2 years now. It feels like 2 years, feels like 10 years.
Feels like 20.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it came from, I and my colleagues call it the CCP virus. And so I think a lot of Americans worry that China is guilty of having brought that virus here, and we've yet to hold them to account. So the book's been a help in trying to explain the confusion over why it is the United States is really so corrupt.
Yeah, and I don't know if you got to catch any of the first segment of the show. We were talking about different things, but one of the things we really didn't get to dive into was the border. And the border is a real problem because we're losing our sovereignty. And, like I was talking with Dr. Gorka, the nation is divided right now. It's like, it's almost like we're in two different Americas, if that makes sense. It's really strange. And you factor in COVID, and you factor in the border situation, what's going on with China, over the Middle East, Afghanistan. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she has promised a job to that soldier, that colonel, as soon as he gets out of the brig. And we're rooting for him to get out of there any day. But I got to tell you, this border situation is terrifying. They're saying there's another 400,000 people on their way.
Yeah, I did catch it, the earlier part of the segment, and you're right. It is an awful, awful thing, but I think we need to be careful not to say that there are two Americas. I think there's one America with people who believe like us. I think that
Yeah,
is much bigger than we think.
I agree.
I personally think that 75% of Americans believe what we do, including about the border. If you go specifically about the border and those 400,000 people, I bet you that number goes up to 95%. What we have is an elite media that controls the flow of communication and social media oligarchs that control how we can receive communications both with one another and with right-thinking people like yourself.
Do you
That
think?
to the extent that they control that, it gives the illusion that we're either in favor of these crazy policies,
Right.
or that half the country is somehow in support of these policies, when in fact these policies are completely unacceptable to, in some cases, as I say, 95% of the American people. If they see 400,000 people on the border, they're going to be opposed to it. They know that. By the way, the American left knows that, and that's why they have to control the flow of information.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. It's almost as though there's probably a segment of the population that's not getting information. Maybe they're maybe like I said with Dr. Gorga, maybe they're not watching the news. Maybe they're not keeping up. A lot more people are tuning in now, though. Again, whether it's the CRT stuff or parents are getting involved, people are getting involved, citizens more and more are waking up. So that's promising. And I agree with you. I think that the media taints the way that it looks visually, right? If you look at it, it's like if you see a big BLM march and they turn on the cameras on CNN, they make it look like it's 100,000 people in the streets burning things, when in reality it's like 1,000. Okay, and
Right.
and to a lot of people, they get scared and they watch it and they think, "Oh no, look what's happening." The reality is we outnumber them. I agree with you, no doubt about it.
Right. Look, and also Americans, a lot of Americans, most Americans, are busy working their butts off to make ends meet for their family. We're living in tough economic times made worse by the Biden administration. And so you can't really expect Americans to be focused on the news and trying to absorb all these things. We live in a republic where they elect people to office to go and stand up and represent them and defend the Constitution. And the Republicans, by and large, are silent on these big issues. Where are the Republicans out there making these big arguments about why the border is open, as it were, and
Yeah.
presenting the left presents all these lies, and the Republicans are just silent about them.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is? Is it because? I mean, I think I know why. I mean, but why do you think it is?
Cowardice, just simple cowardice.
Okay.
And they have donors from the Chamber of Commerce type donors who like open borders, who want cheap labor, and they don't really care what it does to the community. And Donald Trump comes in 5 years ago now and says, wait a minute, this isn't good for our country. It's not good for the working man. It's not good for our communities, and we've got to stop this. Thus begins the war in this country over illegal immigration and what it really means for our economy. And the Republicans went and hid. And Donald Trump stood up, fought, and every force in our society joined together to make sure they could stop him and his anti-globalist agenda and pro-American agenda.
Yeah, that makes sense. The thing that bothers me about that is that when we talk about how the Republicans don't really care what the ramifications are, eventually, and maybe they don't have the wherewithal to recognize it or the vision, but eventually that's going to come home to haunt them, because they're not going to be able to escape the end result of what they're allowing to perpetuate. They've got to put their foot down, and it's like with this infrastructure package that's going on. They've got to put their foot down. There comes a time where you've got to draw a line in the sand and you say, we're not doing this. Enough's enough. You know, it's like we talked about with the Democrats for the last 60 years. They've been perpetuating this story, this narrative that somehow it's the Republicans, the conservatives that, you know, were the party of slavery, the party of the KKK, the party of Jim Crow. But the truth is it was them. And yet they perpetuated this lie over and over again, year after year, every political season. It's like, you know, it was Clarence Thomas then. Now it's Larry Elder or Candace Owens. I don't care who the candidate is. If they're black, they're going to get labeled a white supremacist. They're going to get labeled a racist, an Uncle Tom. It doesn't matter who you put in there. I guarantee you, you can write that question down, stick it on a billboard somewhere, and the next black candidate, the next black commentator that comes out that goes against the left's narrative, that's what they're going to call them. You know it, and I know it.
Right. Well, I totally agree. My colleague Bill Bennett, former Secretary of Education, Bill has the hard and fast rule in Washington is that you're either on offense or you're on defense. And so right now, the left knows that if it plays the race card, and that card is always on the table, that the Republicans will be on defense. And the Republicans have not found any way to go on offense. They don't believe in going on offense. They believe in being good losers who will keep their heads down. They'll be the controlled opposition. You'll have a few like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tom McClintock or Paul Gosar, Jim Jordan, a few other. There'll always be a core group that are absolutely. There'll always be a core group that are fighting, but it's small, and the vast majority keep their head down, raise the money from the Chamber of Commerce, and get reelected. And what we're going through now, that's the bad news. The good news is the American people are waking up to that.
Yes.
The American people are animated. They're becoming committeemen, Republican Party committeemen all across the country.
And the parents, they're even starting to get involved on the local level, which is a good sign.
They're going to school board meetings. They're going to town hall meetings. They're watching shows like yours. They're reading more. They're getting engaged. They don't think Donald Trump lost the election. They think Joe Biden's doing awful things to our country.
Yes.
And so if we can get free and fair elections in 2022 and 2024, we're going to take this country back. And so we always have to remind ourselves, we're going to win this because the American people are on our side. We just need to show them the way. We need to work with them. Actually, we need to work as a team to get this moving in the right direction. We'll have leaders in Congress. They'll be few in number. They'll be few in the Senate. But Donald Trump and the MAGA movement is moving in the right direction. And we just need to follow that. We can't keep our head down. We have to put our heads up, and we just need to fight every single day. Because politics, there's no silver bullets. That's the one fallacy in politics, that you could do one thing or say one thing or write one book or one article, and that's going to be it. No. You have to slug it out every single day.
Absolutely.
And that's how you change people's minds. And it's especially how you change people's minds given the dominance of modern technology, social media companies, and the mainstream media, which seems to dominate things. But there's many, many more of us than there are those folks on the left who are trying to corrupt this country. And so even as bad as things are today, I'm an optimist. I believe we're going to win. We just have to keep on fighting, making better arguments, talking to our countrymen. People ask me what to do. I say, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to the folks at church. Don't be afraid to. They're dying to hear this. And, it's a famous thing in American politics. People say, well, at a party, you never talk about religion and politics. And I'm like, that's the only thing we human beings are qualified to talk about.
Yeah, it reminds me again of, like the stealth jihad with the radical Islam. They know how to do it. I mean, that's part of their mantra. That's part of what they do. It's the same with the Marxist movement. And you're absolutely right. to win these battles, you better wake up every day. You better put on your armor of God before you get out of that bed, because you're going to battle every single day. And it's nasty. It's nasty. There's no doubt about it. But to save our country, if you love America, if you love freedom, if you love your rights, you've got to. I just don't see what other choice, because there's nowhere else to go. If things go bad here, I don't know where else you're going to go. I don't think there is a place.
No, we're the last freedom on earth. And I would add that it's not drudgery that this is fun in its own bizarre way. It's fun to talk to your neighbors about politics and ideas about freedom. And maybe doesn't quite encapsulate it, but it's a noble undertaking to explain that your freedom be lost. And I know I'm talking to you right now, and I'm sure for your listeners, that they see that there's something high about this. This is not low entertainment. This is not rap news. This is not shock radio. This is the highest calling a human being has, which is to defend his country and to defend his countrymen against the forces of evil in the modern world, encapsulated as Marxist, what some people call woke communism that is dominating America today. And so we should be with share engaging in this struggle.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of reverb on you coming back, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Brian Kennedy. We've tried so many of Mike's products at MyPillow. Whether it's the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, or whether it's the MyPillow towel sets. Me and my family here at Indivisible, we've tried all of Mike's great products and we just love them. My mom loves her robe. Mark loves the big dog bed for Shakespeare. And my favorite, the moccasins, which are really great for my feet. Save up to 66% off for MyPillow products for you and your family. Go to MyPillow.com and enter the promo code Indivisible for my show. Or call 1-800-716-4639 and give them the promo code Indivisible for my show. You're going to love it. We're back with Brian Kennedy, and his book is Communist China's War Inside America. I want to talk a little bit about the book. What made you decide to write the book, number one? And are in your investigations and your studying for the book and preparing for the book, obviously you're dealing with the CCP. Does this also involve the Wuhan lab, the virus, all that?
Yeah, well, I wrote the book shortly after. Is that any better?
A little bit, yes.
Sorry. Is that any better now?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. So I wrote the book right in last summer, right when we were in the middle of the Wuhan virus taking hold. And I and a bunch of my colleagues who are on the Committee on the Present Danger in China, that was begun by myself and Steve Bannon and Frank Gaffney. We had been writing and talking about just the Chinese communist threat and the fact that the Chinese were so intimate in American society with our elites. And there's been like almost an elite merger, as some have called it, between American elites and Chinese elites. And the fact that the Chinese were using so much of their financial power to co-opt American business on Wall Street and around the country was something that we wanted to highlight. That book is really a long essay about for many people who don't know much about China and don't know, they know they buy goods from China, but they don't know that China is so intimate in the U.S. economy and in the U.S. political system, that there were so many Chinese students in American universities, that Chinese business people are everywhere in society, and that every Chinese person, a Chinese national that you encounter in the United States at some level has some link to Chinese intelligence, because under Chinese law, every student, every businessman, everybody has to report to the Chinese Communist Party with their academic dealings, their financial dealings, their business dealings, and they want to know who they're working with in the United States. And they want to use that as a network to corrupt the United States. And I would argue they've gone a long way toward doing that. And in that book, I was really simply trying to illustrate to people that when you look out and see how influential China is, or why we're not holding China to account, much of the reason is many of these politicians are in the pocket of the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. And you know, it's interesting. My friend Gordon Chang, he comes on here regularly to give me reports on what's going over in the South China Sea, what's going on with the Wuhan lab, and you know, Peter Danzig and Fauci and the CCP, and you know, their involvement in the lab, but also what's going on elsewhere on the world stage with China. Like right now, you know, with this vacuum in Afghanistan, you know, radical Islam, China, they're going to move right in. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about that.
Well, look, China will do what's ever in their interest. And the U.S., especially under Joe Biden, doesn't seem to either understand its interest or wants to signal to the Chinese Communist Party that they are the supreme power in the world. They, the Chinese Communist Party. Getting out of Afghanistan the way we did was just an absolute embarrassment. And giving up Bagram Air Force Base the way we did, giving up $83 billion worth of equipment, and giving it over to our enemies was a signal, I've argued, that the United States is going to be subservient to the interest of a global elite led by the Chinese Communist Party, and that they can have that part of the world and we'll have our interests over here, they can have their interests over there, but that we're not going to do what's in America's interest.
Right.
And for most Americans, they find that very hard to believe, and it doesn't make any sense. But why we would exit the way we did, I don't believe it's sheer incompetence. I believe it is. I believe it was done on purpose to send a political message.
Yes, I agree with you.
And that's something that our Congress, the Senate and the House, should be investigating. And if they don't do it now, they'll do it in 2022.
Yeah,
when we get the House back.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be done. And again, this article that you wrote in American Mind, Biden embraces defeat. That really says it all in captions, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, how they could do this. I mean, last week in the testimony in the House and the Senate, the generals basically said, no, we didn't tell him to do this. We didn't tell the president to do this. They essentially said, let's keep Bagram Air Force Base and let's keep 2,500 troops. Okay, so who in the White House decided to overrule the generals? Was it Ron Klain, the chief of staff, who many argue is running the country? Was it the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken? Was it Jake Sullivan, who is a political hack of enormous, controversy now that he was behind, one of the people behind.
Was it Susan Rice?
This whole Russia collusion. Was it Susan Rice? So they overruled the generals and wanted to send this signal to the world. And in many ways, I think they saw that after Vietnam, they're all students of history. They saw after Vietnam, America was demoralized and kept its head down for the next 20 years. Now, after this exit in Afghanistan, will America be demoralized, and will we keep our head down for the next 20 years? Because that's certainly what it looks like. And it took a Reagan to get us out of the real crisis globally after Vietnam. It took a while to do that. And hopefully Donald Trump will be elected again in 2024, yes. And he'll be able to get us out of the mess that Joe Biden has gotten us into.
Yeah, and not only that, you throw the caveat in there with this Hunter Biden and Joe Biden investigation from Ukraine and China, and you just wonder how much they're in bed with China for, right? For the favors that have been done. Because I'm going to tell you right now, based on what I know about that investigation, and I'm talking specifically the Ukrainian investigation, I spoke to a U.S. attorney that told me the whole story about the Ukrainian investigation, because the Ukrainian government contacted that U.S. attorney, that specific attorney, and brought the case, brought the evidence, brought the sworn affidavits, volunteered to come and testify here in America against Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. FBI, DOJ said we're not interested.
Well, the FBI looks like a political branch of the Democratic Party right now. It doesn't seem to be interested in, equal justice under the law. There's a lot of good men and women, no doubt, in the FBI. And so I don't mean to disparage all of them, but the political leadership at the very top, the FBI, looks to be, I won't say entirely corrupt, but substantially interested in the political fate of the Democratic establishment rather than equal justice under the law.
Yeah.
And the way James Comey performed, and if you just watch that interview he does regarding General Flynn,
sure,
where he makes a joke of the fact that they were basically just going to target General Flynn and go after him in those early days of the Trump administration. And you have Christopher Wray now. What is he doing?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, Christopher Wray hasn't held anybody accountable for anything. No one, number one. And number two, the reason why that happened and why they went after General Flynn the way that they did, and I have a federal witness that reached out to me through my show. This particular federal witness, who I can't get in front of anybody of importance, and I wish I could, this federal witness is able to trace all the money back to the green energy incentives. See, what happened was Obama and Biden, when Obama was in office, they stole trillions of dollars from the American people, and they ran it through the green energy incentives and the weatherization program, all the way down to the local level. So from the federal level to from the Treasury Department all the way down to the local level, they robbed the American people of trillions of dollars. That's what that's about. And I guarantee you, if General Flynn, and he's been on this show, if General Flynn would have been allowed to do that criminal audit, he would have discovered that, and they would have been in a world of hurt. And there was no way that Obama or Biden were going to allow that audit to go down.
Yeah, look, when government gets this big, the ability for corruption to occur is massive. And I think I don't know all the details of what you're describing, but they sound perfectly reasonable to me. That there was money going everywhere, and they were funneling it through all sorts of business contacts to all their cronies, and they were funneling how much. Well, how much money was just simply being funneled to all these NGOs, all these nonprofits on the local level, doing community outreach of the kind Barack Obama did while he was president? How much of that occurred during the Obama administration, and now being proposed in the Biden administration with all this spending and this infrastructure deal? There's billions and billions going to all these local nonprofits that are really arms of the Democratic Party, designed not to help everyday people, but to ensure that the Democrats get elected. Yeah. And so we have a system of government right now that has grown so large, and there is so little accountability, that it is the job of the next Congress, controlled by sensible people, not this one, but the next one, and the next president, to see if they can't fix that. And they have to do that with urgency, of the kind that wasn't there in the first Trump administration. I think the first Trump administration, he did a lot of good. in deregulation and trying to hold China to account and holding them to account in some respects, but not in many others. Look, China still has, I mean, how much does China owe the United States for what happened because of the CCP virus?
Yeah.
Number one.
Oh yeah.
They don't play by the same rules when it comes to our financial system. Why is that not the case? China today has defaulted sovereign debt from China. They own 1.1 trillion of US Treasury holdings, but they owe Americans well over $1 trillion in defaulted Chinese sovereign debt that they don't think they have to pay on.
And they devalue their currency.
They get a free ride in this country because Wall Street is making money on financial transactions with the CCP by having, public offerings of Chinese companies, selling stocks of the state-owned enterprises. China is getting a pass, and that's got to stop. If Congress is not going to hold them to account, it's going to have to be a U.S. president, and it's not going to be Joe Biden, in my estimation.
No. And by the way, and everybody in this audience knows this, when President Trump got elected, he was the right man for the job at the right time. I have no doubt about it. But on the political side, on the jobs hiring side, cleaning house of the Obama holdovers, they were corrupt on that side too. I have a really good friend of mine who's a lawyer who was over in the Middle East on the civilian side on the surge that was a top-notch candidate for a post in the Trump administration. His application never even got seen because it went in the trash can. Okay. So on the political side of things, hopefully President Trump realizes, and I'm sure he does now, what he's up against. When he comes in, pray to God he gets elected this next election. But as soon as he comes in, hopefully this time he can hit the ground running with the operation to X all that out, so it's not a problem this time around.
Yeah, no, I think he has learned that.
Sure.
Look, President Trump was a businessman. He had all sorts of business folks with him, but he didn't have political folks.
Exactly.
When he came in, he relied on the Republican Party to help, fill his administration with the right kind of people. And they didn't do a very good job of making sure that there were America First MAGA people within the administration. There were some great ones. Again, don't get me wrong.
But you also had the Romneys in there that were trying to sabotage him.
Oh, at every turn. Every turn. There's 4,000 to 7,000 political appointees. How many of those were MAGA? I would venture under 50.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the vast majority had a different agenda than Donald Trump. Frankly, it's a miracle Donald Trump got as much done as he did. And so it showed you the power. It showed you the power of one man to continue to fight. Now, if in the next Trump administration, instead of having 50 MAGA people, he has 5,000, it's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to be working for right now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more about that, Brian. That's a great point. You could really turn things around with those numbers, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah. No, I look, and that's why I'm optimistic here. If we can get through the next year and have fair elections in 2022, I still think we need to get to the bottom of what happened in 2020. But let's make sure we get fair elections in 2022. We'll have a House and a Senate that can make sure that we don't do really crazy things.
Absolutely.
If we get that done, 2024, we get President Trump elected again, and we really implement the MAGA agenda, which was only partially implemented in the first 4 years.
Absolutely. Folks, Brian Kennedy, Communist China's War Inside America. I highly encourage you to get this book and read this. This is very important, and this would go really well with Gordon Chang's book. I recommend them both very highly. And Brian, we're really grateful that you were able to come on the show. I hope that you'll come back, and then we'll get to see more of you as a regular correspondent here.
Great, John. Thank you. My pleasure. Love being with you.
God bless you, my friend. Have a great afternoon.
God bless you. Take care. Thank you.
Hey, Brian. That was Brian Kennedy. We had an amazing show today. We had Dr. Sebastian Gorka. We had our wonderful friend, Melissa Isaak, attorney at law. And by the way, real quick, I'm going to scroll this at the bottom because when I had Dr. Gorka on, I was showing his book. Then I brought Melissa on, and I didn't even get to click on Melissa's information. Let me make sure that you have this. Melissa Isaak, protectingmen.com, and also on Facebook, Isaak Law Firm, Attorneys for Men. And Melissa is amazing. If you don't know Melissa Isaak, she does an amazing job. She's not only an attorney in the civil world, but also in the military world. She's a JAG attorney. Again, protectingmen.com for attorney Melissa Isaak. She is fantastic. She is a valuable teammate, a valuable sponsor, a valuable friend, and just an amazing patriot. And we love Melissa. So listen, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed today's show. Again, we had Dr. Sebastian Gorka, we had Melissa Isaak, we had Brian Kennedy, just amazing guests today, and an amazing show. We went a couple minutes over, but it's worth it when you cover such. I mean, there's a lot of material to cover, and I know that the American people want to know what's going on, and I don't want to shorten it. I mean, if it goes a couple minutes over, it does. But thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Indivisible with John Stubbins. God bless you. God bless your families. And God bless America.
Yeah.